So let's go check out some text processing. So yes, so this is kind of the first step is basically you gather the data, and this part I'm going to kind of skip over because we talked about gathering data. There's nothing too different from what we've talked about before. It just depends what kind of set you have. But the main thing you have to think about is where this text originates is that if it's going to be speech, for example, you have to convert that speech audio format into text and words. Otherwise, you can't do NLP. I will say there has been a recent paper, which is really interesting. Normally, with NLP, you would take speech and use some kind of model, some kind of thing that will convert the speech audio into text, and then take that text and then do whatever you want with it. There was a research paper relatively recently that came out that showed that you can actually do this directly from speech to sentiment, which was really amazing, that you can basically don't have to do that intermediary of text. So note that in general right now, at least as I'm speaking, who knows, maybe in the future this becomes less common. But right now we're converting the speech into text words and then feeding that text into our algorithm. Obviously this does have advantages because we tend to have a lot more text, at least right now. You can get a lot of text, like GB2 has 40 gigabytes of text from the internet. So you can train a lot massive data versus speech. There's a lot more extra fluff to that data, right? Because it's audio. But then you have things like web pages. So you have to get rid of HTML tags because obviously HTML tags are not really important for actual speech and stuff in most cases. And then obviously if you have like Word docs or other text formats, they're going to have some extra junk and stuff like this. We'll see an example today where I show you a Christmas Carol, and that text data is going to have some extra data beforehand. So you have to make sure you remove that kind of stuff. Okay. And then kind of the next part of processing text, we'll go into like the steps of processing. You want to remove irrelevant information. So let's say the dogs in Alaska are cold, hungry, and lonely. There's a lot of redundant information in English, and there's a whole bunch of theory of like why this exists. But things, for example, like punctuation, the commas here and the periods don't really add too much information to the meaning. You could argue maybe some punctuation is important, but in general, the overall meaning of it isn't really affected by the punctuation itself. Capitalization doesn't really mean anything in text. If we say Alaska versus lowercase Alaska, we basically have the same idea here. The capitals at the beginning of a sentence don't really change any meaning, so we can actually make everything lowercase. That's pretty common. And then getting rid of some common words in English, for example, like a, the, are, of. A lot of these things are redundant and stuff like this, where you don't really need this information. So if you got rid of like these words, you might have like dogs, Alaska, cold, hungry, lonely. And those are like, that's pretty much the meaning of it. And this is kind of like, again, reducing the resolution of the data we have to make it easier for us to process. Okay. Some useful tools, NLTK. So I kind of brought this up. There's actually NLTK is the actual package, but they actually have the book freely available here in like HTML form. So you can actually buy this book. I wouldn't buy the book, not because like it's not worth getting. It's just that the book I think is only in the first edition, and the website's actually in the second edition already. So this will be more updated than the actual book if you buy it. But they basically go through here, and you can see a whole bunch of how you can use NLTK. So it's a really good read. It's a lot going through for linguistics and natural language processing before even like building anything. But it's a good thing to kind of go through if you want to see how to use NLTK. I think it does a great job of kind of like going through the different parts and like what you can do with it. It's a little bit different from like what we've done with pandas. It's structured a little differently. But that's one really popular tool. Another tool is regex. So I think I mentioned this before. It's like, I will be the first to say I am not a master of regex. I always want to every year. Like it's like on like my New Year's resolution, like almost like every year for the past like 4 years. It's like I should get better at regex. But it's a really powerful tool once you understand it. And if you don't if you don't have it memorized, right, like me, you can use other tools like cheat sheets. I think the curriculum even shows a cheat sheet that you can look at. I particularly like this tool regexer. Basically you can feed in your regex expression and then your actual tests, and you can kind of see how that functions. I like the format of how it's able to do these different things. So use the tools that are available for you, and ideally learn it. But of course, even if you don't learn it, it's still possible. I will point out this regex crosswords, which I found out a few months ago, which is really cool. You can actually do like these little crosswords, and basically they're built in regex, and essentially you're trying to figure out like what would be things that would cross over in here. So it's a great way to practice regex and stuff like this. It's a little fun. So oh, we got a little snow going on here too. So definitely a little tool that's not really useful by itself in doing regex, excuse me, but can be kind of fun to practice. So maybe during the holidays, you know, kind of sit down by your computer by a toasty fire and play with some regex. So useful thing.